Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I am Paolo, also known as Genoma, here on YouTube and on Instagram. Today we are finally, sixth time that I record this video, finally going through how to recreate the liquid glass effect that Apple has presented. And yes, so we are going to recreate exactly what you see here. We will be able to kind of control individually the frostiness of the glass, its color. So if I want to have a red glass, you can do that. You can see it has shadow, which probably works better in this kind of scenario, but it has a shadow. And it has a distortion, as you can see, of course. It has not only a warping distortion, but it has, of course, and let me reduce this blur a little bit and change the color to something a little bit less saturated. But as you can see, we have the separation of the different channels. We can also control how much of that distortion is around the glass. And what else can we do? Again, yeah, control a lot of that distortion. And we have the shimmer around that we can change the direction of. Maybe not super visible right now, but you will see it later on. And of course, control all the different indexes of refraction individually, so you can get some extra cool effect and some interesting color mixing and so on. So without further ado, let's go and recreate this from scratch. Oop. Here we go. Okay, let's start. So, if you have looked at the Apple event, you can see how they were using some props to sort of explore how the glass bends light and bends the background behind them. And as you can see from these images, these props had thickness, right? And also some rounded edges, some beveled edges. And that is basically what we need to start creating. So we need to process somehow our textures or our initial, whatever we feed into the rendering system in such a way that we create or simulate this effect or this bending around the edges of whatever shape we are providing. So in this case, we're gonna start with a circle, and I will add for now a transform, and we will see why later, and then a null. Remember to set the circle to a certain resolution, could be 20, based on your version of TouchDesigner or whatever your graphic cards can handle. I will use 1024 by 1024. I want this to stay as smooth as possible. I could go higher as well, but for now this is good enough. And I also need to remember to turn this to 32-bit float. That's going to be very important. I will reduce the size of this to maybe 0.1. It doesn't really matter. We can then vary the dimension later on. But we're going to start simple with this. At this point, I'm gonna take out a blur, and now we are trying and recreate basically these rounded edges. Our circle is our glass prop. And I'm gonna set this to 15, to the filter size, and the pre-shrink to 2 for now. So if you look at it closer, it's just a blurred circle. And what we want to do now, we want to give we want to bring back the sharp edges. The way I'm doing this is by taking a composite, is already set to multiply, and take the original shape and fit it into it. So now the two shapes will multiply together, and you can see, maybe you should be able to see it, that yeah, we have like basically a gradient around the edges, and that is kind of, that is what is defining basically our beveled edges. Why am I doing this? Is because if I want to, for example, add a rectangle or any other shape, I want to be able to somewhat generalize the process and make it available and yeah, kind of make it work for anything I feed into it. So here I can just add some corner radius or whatever. I'm gonna also reduce the size of this a little bit, but you can see how here again I'm blurring it out and then masking it, and again I'm getting the same sharp edge with the bevel around it. Of course, I forgot to set this as well to 32-bit float and size. You don't need to do this, but yeah, I just wanted to show you. Let's go back to our circle. Perfect. Now we take out a slope from here, and we set this 0 point to 0 and strength to 1. We leave basically everything as it is. You will not see anything, but there is some information there. If I press A and then N, you can see how the two channels here are actually do have information, and that's perfect. And what the slope does is actually basically reading the ratio of change between pixel and creating some sort of a map of that change. And this is defining basically the shape of our prop and giving at least theoretically or conceptually creating this three-dimensionality. Good. After this, we will go with the displace, and here we need to create some chops as well and bring in our background image. So for this, I'm going to use this. So for this, I'm going to use this image that I just downloaded from Unsplash. Credit to Bart Zimny. And I will just, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to use a fit here to make sure that this is the right size. And also I want to set this to 32-bit float, and in the fit I want to fit outside, so I'm sure that the image is going to fill the square. And I will fit this into the actual source of the displace and my distortion map into the displace image input. One thing I forgot, not very important right now, but let's do it before we completely forget about it. I'm gonna add a math right after our slope. We will see later why. Now, what happens? I don't see anything, and that is because the source midpoint is set to 0.5. I prefer to set this value to 0, and that is because I set the value on my slope to 0 here. If you did not do this, then you could leave this as it is. It's just my own preference, I guess. I like to be centered in a way at 0. But okay, we start to see something. There is some distortion going on. That's good. And I'm gonna at this point take my out so we can see it a little better. And what we want to do though is also allowing that refraction and the separation between the RGB colors due to the different index of refraction of the glass, right? So I'm gonna duplicate this 3 times, 1 for each channel, and then I'm gonna add a reorder after the first displace, and then feed the second and the third displace in the other 2 inputs basically. At this point, nothing has changed, and we should select input 2 for the green and input 3 for the blue channel. And again, nothing has changed yet. And that's because we need to vary the amount of distortion for each channel, basically. And I also want to somewhat be able to control that. So the way I'm doing it is I'm doing a constant from the chops, and I'm gonna duplicate this 4 times. I'm gonna call the different channel are G and B. And then the last one I'm gonna call global. Global, okay. I'm gonna set this to 1. The other one we can leave them to 0 for now. I'm gonna use a select and then duplicate that. Here I'm just going to select the 3 channels, so R, G, and B. And here I will instead only select the global. Finally, I'm gonna extract here a math. Here we go, and feed the global again back into it. Now we're gonna set the combined chops to multiply. So basically now my global is multiplying the RGB values by whatever it is. And then in the range, I'm actually mapping from 0 to 1 to 1 to 2. So basically now our 0 values here are 1. I'm gonna take out a null so that then I can use these values. As you can see here, now I can use this as my little control panel. If I drag this up, I'm basically adding whatever amount I'm adding here to over 1, basically. And this allows us to create different level of distortion for each individual channel. And what the global value does is able to basically tune that down. And as I said, this is the same thing that we are sort of doing for the lens distortion video, in the lens distortion video that I posted a while ago. So similar technique, but just different application. Anyways, let's go forward. And now I'm gonna basically take this value for the red and apply it to both. So by dragging this place on the displace weight, I can reference it. So now I'm applying the distortion level weight through that value. I'm gonna do the same for the second displace and the third one. And now we might start to see something. So let's go back here. And if I I'm not sure if it is actually showing. Maybe it is. One way to actually be sure that this is working, I'm gonna just use a separate method for the background, not circular. I'm gonna add a ramp. Set it to horizontal. Set it to vertical. Interpolate a step. I'm gonna take the control point on this side, bring it roughly in the middle, and then do basically 0.05 or something like that. So I'm creating a band background. I'm gonna put it in there, and now we can start to see actually the effect at work a little better. So I will leave this for a little bit. I don't want to do this throughout the entire video because I feel somehow it breaks my eyes and my brain. But now you can see how basically, if you're looking at this a bit more closely, and I select my control panel over here, here we go. So if I take this to 0, and there's no distortion or no separation between the color. If I increase this, I do start to get it as it should. And again, with the global, I am able to then reduce that effect. Now we might want to have a little bit more of this effect, so we can go here and basically play around with these values. You can blur more and you can see how you get extra separation. I might also want to do make this a little bigger. Here we go. So now we start to actually see what's going on. It's not perfect yet, or will it ever be? I'm not sure. Yeah, so What else can we do? Also, another thing, we added this math earlier. Here we can go and use the multiply to kind of amplify the effect. We can actually also invert the effect by going in minus. I want to keep it positive for now. And you can see it's working pretty nicely now. And again, if you play around with the blur instead, be careful with the pre-shrink because it will reduce the quality of the displacement. But you can go up to 3 and still get pretty good results. So I will leave it there for now, 3 and 23. But we have some problems. Not really problems, but we want to add more complexity to this effect. So let's see. I added a null here. If you haven't noticed, here I want to build my sort of color pipeline for the glass itself, coloring the glass, make it blurred, and other things like that. So let's start with the color. I'm gonna add a constant. This will be my color. I will set it to some sort of red. We will also most likely, just to make sure we are not making problems, I will set that to 32-bit float. We don't really need to do any change in the size there. So what we want to do is to basically color our background for now. So we're taking, we can take here and add a composite. So taking our background before the null, that's what is fed into the displacing section here. And I'm gonna multiply my color on top of that. Now you can see how the resolution has gone down. Probably you can notice we need to make sure that the constant is on top. In that way, it will basically be scaled up and inherit the resolution in a way, or it will not change the resolution. Okay, so now you can imagine how now the glass is red, but we also made the entire background red. So, and we will do some compositing trickery later on to kind of mitigate, of course, or solve this problem. For now, anyways, let's go and add a blur, and this will be instead the frost effect of the glass. And again, we can play around with the values here, but yes, that is what it is. Perfect. So let's try and solve this issue over here. I want to basically take, after the reorder, that's our displaced background. I want to take a composite again and take my original image and multiply that. So now you will see here we have a transparent background with basically just the glass and its distortion. And finally, I want to then take my, by the way, I'm pressing Option and right click on the output and tab to open this, for those of you that might be asking or wondering. I'm gonna take out a composite again, and instead this time I want to put it over. So I will set this to over and then make sure again that my glass is on top of the background. And there you have it. So now we have our colored glass on top of our normal background. Let me add quickly here a noise so we can move around a bit. Sorry. So here in the noise, I'm gonna create 2 channels, X and Y, and I will set them to time slice. And then transform our circle, move it basically. So let me take the X and reference it here, and then the Y and reference it there. So now it's moving extremely fast. Let's tune it down a bit. I'm gonna set the period to 5 and amplitude to 0.5. And that's better. You can start to see how basically this is starting to look nice. One thing that I wanted to add is adding a shadow underneath it. And how do we do that? First of all, the shadow would inherit the color of the glass. So, and we can basically, we get some sort of blurred out clone of whatever shape we have, we get it for free here. So I can use that and bring it down here. And again, composite it with the color. Let's check. Yeah, so I need to put this on top. So we still have it now in 1024 by 1024. So this is my shadow. And what I want to do is I want to multiply it. So insert operator and composite again and multiply it on top of my background. Now there is a problem. For once, we're now again getting this transparency over, and that is a problem. Also, the shadow is literally underneath the glass, and we might want to give it some offset. And the cool thing is that transform will actually help us solving both problems. So here I can take this and move it down like this. So maybe less than that, but we can move it down a little bit. Let me also pause this for a second. So I moved it down, and you can decide how to do it. I wouldn't scale it. Remember not to scale this, because it would get a problem if you have multiple sources. Then the scaling would happen relative to the center of the image, and it wouldn't really work very well. So, but yeah, try and explore, that's fine. Anyways, and then to solve the problem for the background, we set this to 1. So the alpha to 1, set the color to 1 as well. So now we have white, and then we click this comp over background color. So basically now we have added a white background, and then when multiplying, then it will not destroy our or remove our background. And now you can see how we have a soft, nice shadow underneath the glass. And that would be already pretty much enough, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So I want my shadow to also be visible under the glass. So right now, even if I make this darker, I am not able to see the shadow under the glass itself, especially if I move the shadow a little bit down again. There is no variation in the back. So what do? We just add here another composite, you guessed it, and take my, I believe it's this one, yes, the transform, and multiply it on top of the background, or so which still has not been blurred out. So basically now technically we will distort everything, including the shadow behind. That is more or less visible based on the color you're selecting and things like that, and how dark or bright the image is. But I think it's just a nice little detail. And also, for example, if this one is less visible, you can start to see how, is less blurred, you can see how you can see it a bit better behind. Anyways, very small detail, nothing to worry about. So let's animate this again, and it looks pretty nice. Can add some more color separation. Of course, when you start to color the glass, the effect disappears a little bit, so you can desaturate it, and then you will start to get back that separation as well. Cool. What else is missing? Of course, the rim of light around the edges. And in order to do that, the way I'm doing it, not very proud of this technique, but it works. So what do we want? We want to create an edge around our shape, and we could use the edge top, but that one creates an even edge around the entire shape, and that's not what we want. Because if you remember, the buttons of iOS have like kind of shimmer from both sides, but in the middle is not quite as bright, and also they rotate around. So there is actually a top that basically does that for almost free. But before using that, we want to take, I'm gonna start from my blurred image, and we will see why in a second. I'm gonna take a threshold so that basically I'm recreating the shape or the original shape in a way with a little bit more control. I'm gonna set this to alpha, and then basically here, as you can see, I can regulate how big the circle or the outline is. It's not perfect because since we're using it with the blur around the edges, you might have some issues and so on, but we can fix that with some scaling at the end and so on. But again, it's more like to just get as close as possible to the actual effect that we want to achieve. Anyways, from here, we are gonna use the emboss. And what the emboss does is similar to basically what the slope does, but it does it in one channel only, like, or black and white. I'm gonna set the midpoint to 0. You can see there is like an outline on one side. If I press again A and N, I can see the values. It goes from minus 0.5 to 0.5. So I'm gonna set the strength to 2. Now it's going to minus 1 to 1. And then from here, I'm gonna take out a limit and set positive only. So now if I look at the same image now, here the values are from 0 to 1 because basically we are reflecting whatever goes in minus to a positive number. And you can see we have this kind of edge on one side and on the other side, but in the middle it kind of fades down. And the cool thing is that emboss also allows us to choose a direction. So again, I have the emboss selected, and you can see if I go closer, we can change the direction of this shimmer, which is basically literally what happens in the iOS buttons. Anyways, I'm gonna just turn this off, sorry. And finally, then we can take it and composite it for probably the last time on top. So we are actually adding it onto our final composition. Now there is, it looks pretty good. There are though some issues, especially if you decide to lower the opacity of this, or if you decide to, for example, create a softer, soften basically the threshold. That creates a softer line, but also makes it a little bit transparent, which makes in turn it's gonna look a bit strange because you might see the background through the shimmer and so on. So basically the whole reason why I started from the blur and not from our sharp image is that in the threshold, then I can decide basically the offset. And again, let me just stop this for a second and make it maybe a little bigger. So with this method, I can decide the offset of my line. As you can see, I can kind of make it closer or more on top of the glass rather than outside. And again, this is a very small detail and it's not fully scalable in a way, but anyways, it's one way to do it. You can find as well other ways. This is just the way I thought would be look the best. And basically we are done. Again, I can feed in my square and maybe add a little bit more rounded edges. And look at that, it looks pretty good. One last thing though I wanted to add, and it is creating some sort of warp into the glass, make it look imperfect. I think that add so much more to the effect. And you know, of course, in other application of this effect. So here, this is the reason why we added this transform at the beginning. So if we think about it 1 second, the slope is the thing that is the map, the texture that will distort our background. We could add a noise here, right? And of course, we'd have to set it to turn monochrome off and then set the amplitude, actually bring this to 0 and set the amplitude very low. So you can see how we are distorting way more the background basically through this noise. Maybe also bring this to 4 or whatever. Oh. And we are creating some sort of distortion, but as you can see, it's not moving with the glass. So if you have a static kind of composition and you want to apply some effect, you can just do it here, that's fine. But if instead you want the glass and the distortion of it to move together, then we just need to add the noise at this point. So right after our shape, basically, we can add a noise and set it monochrome off. We can probably leave it on for now. Let's try to leave it on. Set offset to 1 and then amplitude to very low. And then into the output, we want to do input times noise. And then the alpha, use the input. So, and there you go. Now the noise is actually being applied before we move the shape. So it's part of the shape itself. And we can have full control over it. Right. And then, you know, the intensity of the distortion and the size of it, we can make like a kind of frosted glass and so on. The difference between this and this is not much, so I would probably leave it black and white. And yeah, here we go. That is what I was looking for. So you can play around with this and basically get different effects. And I think this especially looks cool with, when we have something a bit more organic in the back. So let's bring back the picture of the jungle here. And we can then play a little bit more with this noise distortion, and look at that. It's pretty cool. And we're pretty much done. What did I want to say? Yeah, remember you can play around with the blur. So blur the background even more, make it more kind of frosted in a way. That looks pretty nice. And yeah, just have fun with it. I hope you find some cool application. Please share with me whatever you create. I would love to see. Something that I want to also mention is that this is not well, let's say that this null is the input of our image. If you wrap all of this into base and you do some tweaking, of course, to kind of provide what the background is and so on, you can sort of create something that you can stack on top of, you can stack different effects. If you want, for example, two shapes to be refracting each other in a way, the one on top refracts also the glass in the back. But basically you would have to add a new rendering pipeline for every layer where you have a shape that wants to reflect another shape that is also reflecting. It's a bit complicated to explain, but I can show you here that if I, instead of, now I have only one shape, right? After this transform, I'm gonna add a composite, surprise, and I will add a rectangle. Oh, that's pretty nice, actually. But I'm gonna set it in over, right? So you can see they're somewhat merging. If I turn the noise off, you can see it even more. So it's moving, and it's moving on top, it seems, but they're actually not refracting each other. Like, let's say the circle is on top, it's not going to refract. It's not going to refract whatever the rectangle is refracting, and so on. So again, everything is somewhat on the same layer, and this is one limitation of this system. But at the same time, it could be a strength of it. So just explore, and I hope you found this tutorial useful. I will make exactly what you see right now, I will make it available on my Buy Me a Coffee. So if you want to support me, please head there and support me. With just the cost of a coffee, you can get the files and some extra stuff. If I remember to make some extra stuff, but you do get the file. And follow me on Instagram, share with me what you have done out of this tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and yeah, ask me anything down in the comments. Subscribe, remember to subscribe, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.